today we're going to talk about, it's very similar to what, this first section will be very similar to what we did last week, but maybe not so much scripture. But there's some interesting things going on in the world at the time of the Nativity that, okay, who participated in the Luke Bible study? Right, it was that table, right. So there's some, I don't know, you might not have known this stuff going through Luke either, because this kind of comes in, there's a little bit of nerdy stuff I'm going to throw at you that's like, oh, that was happening? So, but it helps understand kind of why Luke would have done some of the things that he did to help displace what was going on in the world in the show. Because we all know that there's four gospel writers, right? And if they were modern authors, they would be completely different genres. Matthew, he likes detail. He would have been that long novel, that love story, right, going on. Mark is an action. He moves. He would always say, and immediately this happened. He just liked the action to move on and on and on. John, very flowery. His really is a total love story. Very theological based. Luke is science fiction. He likes to get into the details and for everybody to understand what's going on. So each of the Gospels is pointed a little different. And where Matthew and Mark and John were purposely more writing for Jews, Luke's a Gentile. Luke came in and he's writing for the Gentiles. He wasn't one of the apostles. He learned things, all this from St. Peter, and he learned it from St. Paul. And he's a physician. So he's naturally more into details of what's going on. There was another fascinating thing about Luke. Oh, everyone says that, well, St. Paul wrote most of the Bible. No. Luke wrote most of the Bible. Luke is the author of Luke, obviously, and Acts of the Apostles is Luke. That's a quarter of the New Testament. So he's, volume-wise, he's the biggest author. Number of letters, Paul's attributed, but some of Paul's letters are only 1 and 2 pages long. So, but I love all of them. So, as I said, we're going to do, we'll start with the Nativity. So, who is this? This is, I'm not sure where this picture is, but this is Nativity by Franz Christopher Janek. It's kind of the typical Nativity. Oh, Mary's here with us today, Our Lady of Guadalupe, since she is going to be the second part of this. So she's going to stay with us this whole time. The traditional picture that we always think of when we see the Nativity, right? We've got the baby Jesus there in the manger and the angels and the shepherds bringing all their sheep in and all those things. Kind of that typical image we have. No, part of that I hope to break that a little bit from the art to what really would be things would be more like. Guess I have that twice. Here, this is an angel, and I will. When we get to Guadalupe, part of it is we're going to explain the Christian and the Aztec stuff that is in Our Lady of Guadalupe and kind of the importance for all. So hold on to that one, but I definitely talk about that. This is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. This is a Greek Orthodox church. Did I put multiple pictures in this one? No. So, I showed you that picture last time of the Greek Orthodox Church. This is the really grand, because this is it, right? The Church of the Nativity. Underneath underneath the altar, and yes, this is all gold. There's everything. This is one of the most ornate places you'll ever see in your life if you ever have the chance to go there. I know we have some pilgrims that have gone there. They can attest to that. Underneath the altar, you'll get into this line, and you'll go down this set of really narrow, steep stairs, and you're going down into a cave, which what tradition teaches us, and we're relying really heavily on tradition here, is that this is the birthplace of Jesus, down in the cave, and where the manger would be. Now, realistically, everything in Israel, we've learned through tradition from people. Now, as we go back farther, there aren't as many witnesses to the nativity of the Lord, where he would be born. So I don't want to say it gets sketchier, but the key thing is we know it's in Bethlehem. If you want to come and worship me on my birthday, you don't need to know the maternity room I was born in. The hospital in St. Charles, Missouri, St. Joseph's Hospital, is sufficient enough, right? And I think that's the same thing with Lord. There's this great shrine built on top of this. And it's to the best of what information that this grand church is built on top of it, and below is where we signify is the birthplace of Mary. Now, I can't say 100%, but this is what the best of our tradition, and that's good enough. Right next to this church is the Catholic Church of the Nativity, which is actually St. Catherine of Jerusalem. And if you ever watch Midnight Mass on Christmas, that would be the one that you see from Bethlehem, is St. Catherine's. And that's, the whole area down below is catacombs and caves. St. Jerome is buried there because St. Jerome was the first translator of the Bible. And he wished to be buried there, and he lived there very close to where the nativity took place. Every day there's a Catholic procession of the Franciscans that run, because in the Holy Land, the Franciscans are given the authority to run all the sites. And there's a procession every day that our Franciscans lead with to go to venerate. So there's a lot of sharing in the Holy Land between the different religions that are there. St. Catherine of Jerusalem. Oh, not Siena. The Catholic Church is St. Catherine of Jerusalem. It's a different Catherine. Yes. I'm not sure what St. Catherine of Jerusalem did. I just know that's his name. That's just one thing I've never gone back and looked at. So we are familiar with the story of the Nativity, right? You've heard that one a time or two from Luke. In those days, decrees went out from Caesar Augustus that the whole world should be enrolled. This was the first enrollment when Quirinius was governor of Syria. So all went to be enrolled, each to his own town. And Joseph, too, went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David that is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. While they were there, the time came for her to have her child, and she gave birth to the firstborn son. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. No, there it is. David's there again, so the importance. Now there were shepherds in that region living in the fields and keeping the night watch over their flock. The angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone upon them, and they were struck with great fear. The angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I proclaim to you the good news of the great joy that will be for all the people. For today in the city of David a Savior has been born from you, who is the Messiah and Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find an infant wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was a multitude of the heavenly host with the angel praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. Excuse me. The visit of the shepherds. When the angels went away from the heavens, went away from them to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go then to Bethlehem to see this thing that was taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went in haste and found Mary and Joseph and the infant lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known the message that had been told to them about this child. All who had heard it were amazed by what had been told them by the shepherds. And Mary kept all these things, reflecting on them in her heart. Pondering again, right? Then the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, just as it had been told to them. So you obviously, when you go through this, a nativity scene pops up in your head. You know, everything that we've seen all through time and all that, right? You'll have it at home, we'll have it at church, have it in town centers. So, first off, let's talk about the shepherds a little bit. So, shepherds just weren't out all winter milling around in a field. They actually lived in caves. This is an outside of one, and this is Shepherd's Field. I have a Palestinian friend that this is the area he grew up in, and it's called Shepherd's Field, Israel. Here's a picture of my pilgrimage group inside one of these. So basically, the caves would all be broken up. There'd be a back area that you and your family would stay in. I believe they're mostly natural. There's lots of caves in this area. They may be hewn out, you know, spots for candles to go on that, but typically they're natural. And this whole area, this whole hill, this countryside is full of caves. So they may have made their enhancements to it, but the base of it would have been there. So in there, and this one actually has a church area. There's an altar right here. Family would do their self in the back of it, you know, make up their living quarters. Not elaborate, I mean, not huge. In the pecking order, shepherds were like they were their day laborers, right? They were lowest in economic picture, or real close to it. So it would be a very modest place, and then because your herd is your livelihood, and these wouldn't be like today. We're huge commercial farmers having 200,000 cattle isn't anything we think about like out in the West or the Midwest, the big commercial enterprises. No, everyone was a family organization. You took care and you had your own sheep and all that. And because they were such an investment for you as the shepherd in the family, and it was your family-run operation, your herd would stay in the cave also with you. So for protection and at night, and then you would feed them. So you really weren't this was your wintering quarters. You may go up to high pastures in the summer, but in winter you would come, or times of, or winter or times that you need to, when the high pastures weren't good, you would come back to your home base. And your animals would be here. Now, it's also, the herds were not all sheep. Sheep were a luxury. Probably 90%, 85 to 90% of your herd as a shepherd would be goats. Goats are very resilient. They're very strong. They can protect themselves. Their meat is not as wonderful as a lamb chop, if you've ever partaken in a really good lamb chop. And they poop a lot. And their skin is really only good for like making tents. I mean, goats are very rough. Goats kind of like the tomboys of the world. Sheep, very expensive. A sheep's only actually, sheep has no natural defenses against the world. All it does is it's bleep, bah, bah. It can't fight, it can't do anything. A goat can. A goat's got horns, and he will butt heads, and very resilient. Sheep are a luxury, so you would invest everything into sheep, maybe 10, 15%, because it was a risk, because they could easily be eaten by something, and you would want to keep them in good condition because they were much more expensive. Sheep meat tastes a lot better than goat meat. It's much more tenderer. And then especially when you look at wool. Now their wool has a lot of purposes. We still use real wool. We look upon real wool as that's one of the best things that you can get. What else is there with sheep? Oh. And then you could really make your bang for the buck when you're getting to sacrifice time with the church, because then you can take your choicest lambs without blemish, and you can make more money selling them for sacrifice. So sheep were an investment that had to be guarded by the shepherds a lot. So that's why they would do things like this, but they didn't risk everything in sheep because they were much more expensive. But you can make some good money as a shepherd by having it as kind of your side business. Your goats would be your standard. Everybody would need something from a goat. When travelers would need to make tents, their skins were very, very durable. Goats sheep are really nice to have, necessary for sacrifice, celebrations. You go, let's have lamb. So that's generally nobody knows about those things. Those are kind of coming. It's just more of the real realities of that. And of course, here in the center of the shepherd's field, and I just want to kind of show you, because we all think about the shepherds going. The church of the shepherd is right there. But just for kind of understanding, I'm standing outside the church of the shepherd, which is kind of in the middle part of that area. And if I look over the wall and up the hill, and this is right on the outside of Bethlehem, maybe about 1.5 miles away would be the church in Nativity. So I'm just showing that because it's not like the shepherds were scattered all over Israel. They all come in from everywhere. They're local, and the angels kind of say, hey, go see. And, well, it's much easier to go 1.5 miles or 1 mile or so than to come in there like everybody would be for Passover when it was required to come in. I'll leave out that tidbit. Okay, so there are some significant things besides David in the Nativity. So first off, Caesar Augustus is mentioned, and there's something he did more so than just the census that Joseph and his family had to go back for. That was nothing compared to other things, which led to why Luke kind of had to comprise his gospel the way he did to combat some of that. And we have the good news, the importance of Bethlehem, the swaddling, and the manger. So let's start, obviously, Caesar Augustus is Caesar. He's the head of Rome, right? He's their Caesar. He's the emperor. He's over everything they have conquered, which Rome is part of. This was, I can't remember when this Preen inscription was uncovered, but this was basically another of his decrees that was sent out. See if anything in it kind of resemble something that you might have heard before. So, the providence which has ordered the whole of our life has ordained the most perfect consummation for human life by giving to it Caesar Augustus, by sending in him, as it were, a savior for us and those who come after us, to make war to cease, to create order everywhere. The birthday of the god Augustus was the beginning of the gospel for the world that came by him. Yeah, this is not what Luke is saying about Jesus. This is what Caesar's saying about Caesar. Caesar's saying, I am so wonderful. I am God. I am the reason for everyone to exist. You know, you can see him pounding his chest on all that. So, you can see a lot of similarities between this and the Christian gospel, can't you? Part of what Luke had to do was like, and Luke is a pagan. I'm not sure what country of origin he was from. Yeah, I think it's Greece. But a lot of the language, because they had to combat this. Because, no. Caesar is a man. Caesar was born a man. And that wasn't that really unusual. Pharaohs. The pharaohs in Egypt, they thought they were God, you know. Sometimes when our political leaders think that they're God, or they get accused that they're God from some side or another, thinking that they're God, it's still a problem that might go on today. So a big part of Luke is, let's set the story straight. So a lot of that comes in from there. Let's see if there's anything good to point out. And Caesar Augustus, well, he was the first Roman to make this declaration. And he was very powerful. You see that he wanted that he was going to be worshipped as divine, that he was making himself a god. He refers to himself as the savior of the world. I am that good. Without me, you can't do anything. Where would you have been if I didn't come along? You know, it's a lot of chest pounding, a lot of machismo going on in this one. Yeah. Caesar Augustus would have been the one killed, massacred in the Senate. Pardon? Yes. And then, so if you were a Jew, or you were converting to Judaism, like Luke was, the Gentiles coming to follow the Messiah, to follow the Christ, to follow Jesus, this would have been blasphemous for you, right? It should be for us, too. So I kind of see this when I put the two of it together, and it's like, you know, Luke had to orchestrate the Gospel of Luke to set this record straight. So especially in the beginning of setting everything up that we've already gone through, this was a major point that he was trying to get to in writing it. I think he did a good job because he counteracted everything that Caesar Augustus said. So, next part, the importance of Bethlehem. As a good first century Jew, you would have known that Bethlehem was the city of David, right? This is where David was born. And you would know that this is where his line came from. If you were going to continue the reign of David into another generation, it's got to come out of Bethlehem. No, I've kind of skipped. We're going to Bethlehem. Don't hold me back by following order. Free will. I know, some of us, see, I'm trying to mess you up. So what else happened so what did it really, I won't go through 2 Samuel, but basically, Saul was the first king, and the first king of Israel. God became disheartened with him, and he said he's not following what I want him to do. It's going to be a constant theme that goes on with all the kings that we fall away from. And so God says, send Samuel, who was the great prophet of the time. I want you to go to Bethlehem. You're going to go to Jesse's house, and I'm going to show you from his sons who I want to be the next king. And Samuel's first said, well, wait a minute, Saul's the king now. What are we doing? And God, no, he's not going to be king anymore. We're going to move on. Someone who's after my heart. And Samuel, long story short, Samuel goes to Bethlehem. He goes and has dinner with Jesse, and he calls all of his sons in, and he's first thinking, oh man, this first one, he looks mighty and magical and strong, and he's going to be a great king. And nope, not him. He goes through I think there's 7 brothers. Goes through them all, and no, not him. And it's like, Samuel finally goes to Jesse. Is there another one? He goes, well, yeah, I got this little runt of a son who he's out in the fields right now taking care of the sheep. Well, we're not doing anything till he comes in. And as soon as Samuel sees him, he knows that this is who God was looking for. He's a ruddy youth. I still don't really understand the term ruddy, but that just sticks in my mind from there. It's like, but the key thing is, I'm not looking for how humans looking at people. I'm looking how I see people from the inside, the entire thing, everything about them. David is it. So he anoints David, and this all takes place in Bethlehem. So Bethlehem is where the next Messiah, or where the Messiah needs, the Meshach in Hebrew, needs to come from, to continue this line. That's why the importance of Bethlehem. And then there's also, it's very traditional in Old Testament times that the blessings go to the youngest child from the father, where our tradition is more of the oldest child. So like the firstborn, King Charles being the firstborn, he's the one who became king, and Elizabeth was the firstborn. A lot of the blessings in Old Testament time went to the younger ones. So I'm not sure when that changed the norm, but God never really cared about what your birth order was. It was about who you were. And this is, I just basically just told you the story of Samuel 16. Is there anything else we should talk about with that? No. Then there's also the prophecy of Micah, another book, that Bethlehem epitaph, that's Bethlehem as we know it. That's the home of the Davidic line. So it's written in a couple of places that Bethlehem is an important city. And Bethlehem is it's much bigger now because of tourism, pilgrims going. It was middle of nowhere, just a small little town, nothing significant, very, very rural. It'd be like going up to, even Dawsonville's probably bigger now. Yeah, you're going middle of nowhere, South Georgia maybe. Now with tourism, all the pilgrims going, we've got hotels, grand hotels, built in Bethlehem. And so you really can't picture today how it would have been. You kind of have to go back in your imagination. So the manger. Let's talk about the manger. What is a manger? It's a food trough. Mary did not climb into a food trough to have her baby. They probably used it as a crib, right? They would clean it up. I mean, they're not going to toss it in there with all the scraps, everything that you feed. They would have cleaned it up, put a blanket in there, right? Nobody here would take their baby and throw it into a food trough. There's definitely a lot of symbolism that goes on with the manger. So, and this is probably another cave also. Well, we know from traditions the cave. We think of it as like from the way Christmas stories come through on Hallmark and everything, and all those that, oh, well, someone's their basement or something like that. There's probably another cave. The area of Bethlehem is littered with cave. People would have used them. It was probably the same setup that I kind of showed you with the shepherd's cave. Probably very similar to that. And then the angels would have said, go see. And they would have gone and seen. And, we have from the Little Drummer Boy, right, musicals, all the claymation things that we had as kids or our kids had, poisoning our minds against what history would have just been a little bit allowed. Now, I do think, I'm not the only one that thinks, but there's significance that it was a food trough, right? What's one of, let me just think about the food trough, the importance of Jesus going into a food trough as a baby, and the Eucharist, the bread of life. Yeah, place where they eat. Let's talk about swaddling. My wife she's going to hate it, though, she was the worst swaddler. She could not swaddle our child. Those younger ones of us here who don't know that yet, it's basically it's a way to wrap your child up so they don't sit there and wail around, to protect them, to keep them warm, and they like that because it's very womb-like. They can't move in the womb, so it's security in a sense of that. It's kind of a sign of sacrifice to some regard. I mean, they're the weakest of the weak. They're a newborn baby. We can't think of anything in our society that's more precious and more at risk than a newborn baby. I mean, you've got to feed it every couple of hours. It can do absolutely nothing for itself. You have to change it. You have to do everything. It can't move. I mean, when a farm animal, those lambs come out, they can walk almost right away. I mean, it takes forever for our children to move on their own. And they don't listen nearly as good as a farm animal does to its mother. So, but there's part of it is, that sweet and all that. You can also think it's the swaddling. Take that to the cross, where he was completely stripped of everything he had and was just in a loincloth up on the cross. So there's some symbolism to help people come along, because Luke's writing this for Gentiles. This would have gone to Greece. No one in Israel is going to read this. So he's having to do, if you're a good Jew and you're reading Matthew and Mark, you already know all of the backstory. You know, because like Mary and Joseph were good Jews and knew all these stories. A Gentile who's converting, they don't know any of the Old Testament. So Luke's putting this in there along with the backstory to flush it out. So the Gentiles can make these connections of what's going on. Okay, so in the good news, I just like doing things out of order. Now I'll come back to your good news. Well, if we go back to Caesar Augustus's thing, he said, start off, he said he was the good news. The word, the Latin word, evangelium, is the Greek word, and that's the root for gospel. Also translates to the good news. So the gospel message, the good news message, we've got new map here. One of our translations is called the good news. The word evangelization comes from the same root word that the good news, the gospel, comes from. The word angel, an angel's job is to go out. Well, what we know an angel's job is to go out and to tell the world. They told the shepherds to go see. They told Mary she's going to have a child. They told Zechariah that Elizabeth was going to have a child. They told Abraham that Sarah, or Abram at the time, that Sarah was going to have a child. It comes from the same root. They were out giving the good news. That's the good. So the good news is kind of a contemplation of it all. Did I do all five? Did I miss one? What am I missing? I think we kind of talked about them. No, because we talked about nativity. We'll slide back up. We did Caesar, the good news, the importance of Bethlehem, swaddling in the manger. Okay, so I threw a lot at you. What do you want to know? Did I miss something? Do I need to clarify something? I never said I could spell. Spell check. Got it. Okay. We can talk about the manger. No, manger. Thank you. We will make that. You're fine. Anything else you want to go about from Luke?
That was known as the city of bread.
Yes.
And back to Luke writing for the Gentiles. In our Luke study, just a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that was brought out when they were doing the road to Emmaus, it is thought that he might have been the unknown person traveling to Emmaus, and he actually was instructed by Jesus, and that's why his gospel and all his writings are so important. Because even though he wasn't an apostle, he actually conversed with Jesus. And I was very impressed with that. I had never heard that before. That's it.
I'm looking for help. Come on. No, you're right. On the road to Emmaus, quarter of the Bible is written by Luke and attested to Luke. It's not a mystery. It actually says that in the preambles. He's writing a letter to someone to tell everything that he knows, and he does. That's the continuation story is actually the apostles. Did you have one?
I just wanted to expand. I didn't quite understand that she said the last part that you talked about. I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that you said he. I didn't get what you meant by that pronoun he, that he actually spoke with God. What can you're talking about the
Okay, in the story, the road to Emmaus, is everybody familiar with that story? So Jesus meets these two, I think there were three, I don't know if there were two or three. One of them has never been named in the Bible, but in the study that we had on Luke, the thinking is that the unknown person was Luke, and that he got firsthand information, and that's why his writings are so important, and we can be sure that they're true because he probably got everything right directly from Jesus, even though he was not one of the 12 apostles that traveled with Jesus before Jesus died. So the road to Emmaus, takes place after Jesus has resurrected from the dead.
Right. So the road to Emmaus took place Easter evening, so Sunday evening for us, and they're distraught. They're like, "What happened?" So they left before the resurrection. They started their trip, and they're distraught. I mean, like, how can Jesus die? He told us who he was. He was going to be here forever. So they're making their way back home. I think they're going down, I think that it was a southern trip. And a stranger comes up to him and starts talking to him and telling them the good news. And it's like, how can you be the only people who don't know the resurrection? And it wasn't really public knowledge yet. I mean, they had left. It's not like it was a Twitter feed and a TikTok was made and it's like all over the world. If any person would have loved Twitter and TikTok, it would have been St. Paul, definitely, right? Because I love the way Paul writes because I am the master of the run-on sentence also, but we know Paul would have loved that. Just, let me, put that ideal out there right away. So, yeah, we don't have that. These are some of the first people, and this unknown person starts telling them everything, and then he's like, I'm going to go on, and they invite him to go have dinner with him because now it's evening, it's late Sunday, and they said, why don't you come have dinner with us? And he masked their eyes so they wouldn't be able to recognize him. And then he goes right into the breaking of the bread at dinner, and they're like, oh, it's Jesus. And he disappears, and they go back and tell everyone. So it's a second confirmation that Jesus is risen. So, because Mary Magdalene was the first person, and then these two people would have known it would have been the second real confirmation, because this would have been before he would come back to him, before he would have appeared. I think they ordered that before he would have came and appeared to all the apostles. And this unknown is not that uncommon. If you look in Mark, if you remember the part in Mark, I don't remember the number, but that there's a nearly naked boy at the Garden of Gethsemane who jumps out when the guards show him up. Everyone thinks that's Mark. That he would have been probably younger. He would have been maybe 12 or 13 at this time. He was probably the son of the people who owned the upper room. And, Chosen makes a little allusion to that. But I don't think they've gone in. They haven't gotten to any of this in Luke really yet. Anything else you want to talk about with the Nativity? I cover your bases. For Nativity, our traditional Nativity set, we thank St. Francis for that, because we need to do things like that. So it's broke down. We'll have Nativity here. I always grew up with a Nativity set in my home, which I need to replace. I love the one at Costco. It's a little bit bigger. I've been saying for like 15 years I'm going to go get it. And I always wait till after Christmas is gone. So I think this year I got to finally go do it. Okay, good. Do you need a break? So you might need coffee. You're more than welcome to get up. Why don't we take a little 5-minute? You can talk amongst yourselves or think. You're not supposed to. You learn something new every time. Okay, Carol.
I never knew that word betrothed meant what it
Okay, are you ready to move on to our fourth part? Okay, so this is completely different. Okay, so we spent the last 2 weeks, we've gone over Mary finding out, this, going to the visitation, and the nativity. I really call this Our Lady of Guadalupe for gringos. Because in our Anglo part of the church, we don't understand Our Lady of Guadalupe. And we think of things more of a European viewpoint instead of a New World viewpoint. Let me just ask, because I'm always looking home, is anyone here of Hispanic descent? You're going to help me stay honest, okay?
Okay, so I didn't come into the church until like 2022, but I was baptized Catholic. And I do remember my grandma having a big portrait of Guadalupe.
Of course, grandmother had a big portrait. I have this beautiful portrait of Guadalupe. So I've brought the statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe to be with us. It's missing a couple of points. We're going to go over the entire. Okay, Deacon David and Father wouldn't let me bring our big picture that's in the back of church. I invite you to go spend some time praying it. I have a half version certified copy of that at home that's still wrote up since I came back from Mexico City, that I have these grandiose plans to build this elaborate frame for to match the tilma that's in the basilica. She was the first, Our Lady of Guadalupe actually was our first apparition. This is the first time Mary came to the world. And, nope, she beats Fatima. She came to the world when we needed her, and the amount of conversions that were caused by her, the Franciscan priests were like all day long baptizing people for years. Millions and millions of people came to the faith because of her apparition and what it meant. So, every good Hispanic grandmother has a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I have my own little statue that I got. It's more of the Aztec design. I mean, you've seen Mexican pottery, which kind of comes from Puebla, that area. It's a style that's done there. I have a beautiful one, a little one of Our Lady of Guadalupe like that. It's so light, it's got to be fiberglass. I can pick it up like that. This one's fiberglass. And it's usually what they're going to use for processions. So Our Lady. Okay, so at the time before she appeared, there's no United States, there's no Mexico, there's no Guatemala, there's no Cuba, there's no Brazil, there's no Argentina, there's no Colombia. It's the Americas. So she is Our Lady of the Americas. She's not Our Lady of Mexico. She's Our Lady of the Americas, which includes us, North, South America, and all that. So, and at the time was when the Spanish were trying to get filthy rich on gold by going to the New World, and they're wanting to take they think the Aztecs have all the gold in the world. It's always about money. It's always about gold, just like Caesar wanted. They wanted the power. One of the things that the Spanish did differently than, say, the British when they conquered their worlds, when the British came here to the New World, they only really came to our North America section, not including Mexico down, so where we have United States and Canada. When they would come and take over the world, we know our history, right? So we kick all the Indians out and keep moving them farther west because we want to colonize and make this a little European country. And we keep booting them, keep booting them, keep booting them, and whatever happens, we don't care. We're trying to eradicate them, get them out, so we can take over everything. Spanish have a different philosophy. They intermingle. That's why you see such a diversity in races in the Latin countries. In Aztec, a true local at that time would have been familiar, looking like our Native Americans, the ones that are remaining. Same sort of bloodlines and all that, because they would have come down together. The Europeans came over, the Spanish came over, and they would intermarry. They would use it as a base, maybe kind of blunt and but maybe like a breeding base and all that. And they would integrate with the civilization that way. So, and it was just kind of the difference. So instead of wiping out and pushing everything away, the Spanish would intermingle. And that was probably really because of the Franciscans that went with them. So they had priests that went with them and traveled with them. And while the conquistadors were only worried about finding where the gold was to send that back to the king and queen, the Franciscans saw this as a giant opportunity to convert people, to convert the heathens and bring them to God, and that was their viewpoint and all that. So through the entire time of when they came to the New World, you can understand that the natives really didn't want to be taken over, and they would fight, and they would argue, and there would be a constant war, but Spanish had better weapons, they had armor, and we know where things kind of go from that. So that's kind of the viewpoint of the world that was going on that day. And the important cities in southern Mexico are really travel stops. So they had I forget where in Mexico they would initially port, but every big city would basically be how far they could travel in a day or two. And so then they could get to each place, because they were all about trying to get resources back, and so how they could transport them back. So every day and a half of travel, 2 days of travel, there's like a great big city that's really grown up, where there's not just a church on every street corner. Like one time I went to Pueblo, Mexico, which is like by bus is like an hour and a half outside of Mexico City. But I've never seen so many churches. It's not that there was a church on every street corner. There really was a church on every street corner, where the four streets met. There's church here, church here, church here, church here, because every sect that came over, the nuns, the Franciscans, everybody who came over built their own church for a place for their people to rest up to continue the journey. I've never been any place where I've seen so many churches that still exist going back to the 1500s. So there is conversion. The Franciscans took time to learn the language, and they translated the gospel message into the native languages and it's more than just Aztecs. That was the predominant one that you're thinking of at that particular time. And they would take time to teach them the gospel in their own language. Franciscans were very revolutionary. Nobody did this. Nobody, we talk about our big thing with Martin Luther, so think about the timing of all this. It's in that same period of time where in Europe, you had to know Latin to fully participate, and the Franciscans are going, there's no way, so we're going to translate our message to them. So that's really one of the first big mass translations, and using that in their version of OCIA or RCIA, were that they were converting. And the Aztecs were they believed in human sacrifice. If you go to the Great Museum in Mexico City today, the Franciscans have even taken one of the altars they used for sacrifice, and they made it an altar for the sacrifice of the Mass. Because they were about absorbing them and teaching them, and so they understand the conversion. And it's not going all that well. They are getting some people to convert and all that along the line. Now, let me ask a question. Do you want me to read you the story that they're going to do for Our Lady of Guadalupe of the miracle that happened, or you want me to kind of go through and give my embellishments and make it maybe a little bit more entertaining? Because you can look up the full story, and you're going to help me stay honest, because Grandma told you. So I'm sure I'm going to miss a couple of things, right? Just reading is a little dry. You want to have some more fun than that. So I do have to. I will use it as a base to remember get the names right, and don't make fun of my Spanish pronunciations. So this would have been in 1531. Yeah, we'll use this. So this is okay. So you're familiar with the image. You see this image, and you know that this image is based on a painting that is probably in every Catholic church here in North Atlanta and Georgia, and in every Hispanic grandmother's room. I have a picture of this. What that painting's depicting is actually a tilma. A tilma is it's a work apron that they would use in the fields. And it was made from the fibers of a cactus. And that's an integral part of the story, but that's what a tilma is. It's kind of, it's like he's working out in the fields, and he would use this to gather, and he could put it all this and carry it around and move it around. So it was something that they used for work. And this is a depiction of when he went to the bishop at the end. So I don't want to blow that. That's Juan Diego. So Juan Diego lived outside of Mexico City, I think in Tutulian. And he was an early convert to Catholicism. His wife was a convert. His uncle, his whole family had converted. And every Saturday, what the Franciscans would do, they would teach them they would have their catechism classes for them. Because they were not like today when we go through RCIA and OCIA. I say they're interchangeable. OCIA now is the order of Christian initiation. Now you go through and learn, we have teaching, right? And that kind of goes back, that's the way it was before. So we teach you things and you learn about the faith before you're baptized. At the Byzantine time of the church, it would be this kind of the same thing. What was going on in Europe was you couldn't even come inside a church unless you were Catholic. The baptismal fonts are outside the church, every place else in the world at this time. And you had to be baptized. That's what, like at Pisa, across from the Pisa is the tower out for the baptismal font. You would have to be baptized where you'd be allowed to go inside the church. If you go to the Holy Land and you go back to see a lot of Byzantine-era churches, that's the way they're built. The Franciscans, I told you, they kind of changed things, and they said, no, we're going to baptize first, then we're going to teach. So, okay, it's Saturday, everyone's going to go, it's Catechesis Day. And Don Pablo is going along and doing the same thing. He's on his way to, or Juan Diego. Don Pablo's a tequila. I knew that was wrong. You were supposed to correct me. Okay, so he's on, Juan Diego is on his way to catechism class, and he's going around this mountain. And it's basically downtown, well, it's the outskirts of Mexico City. And he first runs into Our Lady, an apparition, because he didn't know who it was. He just saw this beautiful lady. And I'm going to get my order out, but you can go read the story and get the full thing. But basically, she says, I want you to build a church here for me. And he's like, you got the wrong guy, lady. I'm nobody. You know, that's kind of a theme that always happens, right? God always comes, or she's kind of doing the same thing. Maybe not the most powerful people that change his mind. She kind of does the same thing. And he finally says, okay, I'll go tell the bishop. And the bishop, he goes and sees the bishop, who's Mexican. Sorry, Spanish, because all the priests would be ordained in Spain. I can't remember. We haven't hit when they would ordain New World priests yet, but it's definitely after this. That would have been like after the Mexican Revolution, when they would be ordained in Mexico. And that was part of the reason for the Mexican Revolution and the other revolutions that happened in the New World. So he went to the bishop and he told her the story, and he's like, you're crazy, go away. So he goes away. Then he goes, next time he goes, he walks by Tepac Hill. It's winter. That's why you're wearing the coat all the time, your work jacket all the time too. And he goes and sees her and says, hey, what's going on? And he's like, you know, I'm unsure I'm the right person. He goes and gives a little bit more, and he goes back and he says, okay, we'll talk to the bishop. He goes to talk to the bishop. He waits forever to see the bishop. You always wait forever to see the bishop. He's a busy man, right? And he says, you know, I need a sign. You're coming telling me I need to build this church. I can't just take your word. I need a sign for this. So he sends him away. And the bishop then sends two guys with him, two of his people, go follow him and see what he's doing. And Juan Diego goes, you know, I got a lot going on. I've got all this going on. He doesn't really want to go by this mountain again. And he's walking on the way back, going about his business. Well, the bishop's men lose him. They go back and say, well, we can't find him. And then he's supposed to go see Mary again, because when he left, he said, I'll come tell you, keep you up to date what's going on. But then his uncle gets sick. And so his uncle gets really sick. And he's like, well, do I go see the lady and tell her, or do I go take care of my uncle, because he's really sick? He needs to see a priest. And he's like, what do I do? So he says, but I got to go by the same place. I'm going to take care of my uncle. I'm going to go give him a priest so he can confess. And because his uncle had converted also. And he said, well, I'll just take a different way around the mountain. And so he's on the way, and thinking he's going to get past Mary. Nope, she's there. Where you been? Right? And he says, well, my uncle's sick and all that, and I got something to tell you, but let me take care of my uncle. And she's like, nope, he's fixed. He's fine. He's healthy. Don't worry about your uncle anymore. It's actually part of the miracle. There's 5 things that happen. People don't remember this one because Mary wasn't actually there, but she was. And it's on the other side. Mexico City is the most interesting place. Mexico City Beautiful city, wonderful city. It's actually built on this island in the middle of a lake. Because you've seen them, have you ever seen the Mexican flag? It has this eagle. The Aztecs had a vision that where they needed to build their capital city was where this eagle, I think it was an eagle and a fish, where they see this sign. And it was actually this little bitty island in the middle of a lake, and that's where they started. Mexico City is actually built on a lake, and they drove through centuries and centuries. They've driven piers and all that. Mexico City is actually one of those sinking cities. You know, it's like New Orleans was that same thing. So Mexico City is one of the easily top 10 biggest cities in the world. It's 20 million. It's built on a lake in sinking. Kind of interesting side story. Her uncle lived on the other side of that lake. That's where he was wanting to go get a priest and then go all the way over and get him taken care of. And she goes, no, I've taken care of your uncle. Don't worry about that. And that's part of the story when you read it. She really did. She took care of her uncle and he was healed. And he lived a fine life. And so he told her what the bishop said. He goes, he needs a sign. Well, this is where it's key. It's winter in Mexico at this time. The old, can I call it, I'll say Mexico City. There's not a Mexico City at this time. I'm not sure, it's whatever the Aztec city would have been. He goes, he needs a sign. So she says, okay, I want you to go up and gather these special Castilian roses that are growing up in the hills. And it's like, it's winter, there's nothing growing up there. So, nope. Go gather them, just put them in there, and then come down. So he goes up, and it's this work cloth, it was for like getting cactuses and all whatever their agriculture would be at the time. It was this giant cloth that he could carry stuff. It was probably really bigger than these depictions. And he went up, and these roses are blooming. It's like, I guess maybe it's the mountain or something. This is Tapek Hill. Beautiful place. And there's still roses growing on it now. And of course they've been planted because I was there in winter and they actually were they weren't blooming. He's picking these all up and he's got this bundle. He walks down to her and he says, okay, go take it and show the bishop. And he goes, so he's taking all these, he's taking this bundle, he takes it to the bishop to show it. And I go, I have your proof, let me show it to you. And he says, okay, so he lays it out. All these roses fall out. And this is what the bishop sees. He sees Our Lady. Now, I told you this is made from cactuses, right? It's the fibers of the cactus when they would press all the juices out. It's probably where I remember Don Pablo from. Cactus tequila is cactus juice. As you can imagine, cactus is quite stiff. It's not the most pliable thing. It's very durable. Cactus only will last these tilmas, these work coats, because of what they're made, would probably, at the most, the fibers would last 30 years. It's totally organic. It would break down. And it's very rough. Kind of like, think of like a burlap sack, right? You wouldn't wear that as a piece of clothing unless you were doing really severe penance for something. So, the flowers had imprinted this image of Our Lady. And there's some things in this, I'll go through some of these things. It's this fascinating book. There's many fascinating books. And it will be celebrated here on December 12th coming up. But this image is on his tilma. And they've done some scientific studies with modern technology on this tilma. This tilma, that tilma still exists. And yes, should only last it 30 years before deteriorating. And they've looked at the fibers, and it's not painted on. Like when you would paint, you get paint on your clothes, you've got paint on your clothes. the image is actually totally embedded in the fibers. Nobody can explain it. And some of it's, I think it was NASA, but there's a big U.S. science-based place, I think it was NASA, has been one of the places that did investigations on the tilma. And they've even gone down the road, because it's like a burlap sack, that's what it is. It makes no sense. Nobody can earthly explain this. They've actually even zoomed in on the image of her eyes, and the clarity is actually, it's not just like, aren't you glad I don't do that during a homily? And it's not just like the painting you would see in here, like you would, like if a regular artist came and did something. Go Google any of this. I'm not making anything up. This is all documented. They've actually totally zoomed in on these things, and the image and you know how your eye works, right? Your eye, light comes through, it's refracted upside down, goes onto the back of your eyeball. I'm sure I don't know what the real word for that is. And then your brain absorbs all that, and so that's how we see it. So we actually see everything upside down. Even looking at the zoomed in photos on her eyes, she sees exactly what Juan Diego sees, the bishop and his attendant standing by him in the zoomed in pictures. And there's some other things about this that I want to go over that are about her image, and this isn't the complete image, right? This is what I can easily carry down. The complete image, the painting that's at your grandmother's house and that we have at church, I have at home, it's a representation of what the tilma is, right? So it's not going to have that same clarity. It's a printing of it, right? The original tilma is in the modern basilica in Mexico City, and it's one of the largest pilgrimage sites in the world. On our feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Father Ignacio has been to this. There will be 6 million people at one Mass, basically filling the size of our campus here. So I think of the parking lots. Obviously, they're not driving cars. I've been there, and it's when you get into older cities, nothing's flat. Everything's hilly. There's bumps, there's curves, settlement, and all those things. I can't imagine 6 million people anywhere. I can't imagine 6 billion people. Father Ignacio and I were talking because it's just amazing because it's like that 6 million is people going out the streets that are connecting to it, everyone just trying to get as close as possible. And it's not just a Mass, they celebrate the whole thing, everything going on. If you come to Our Lady of Guadalupe celebration, it'll start the night before, and they'll go through and tell the whole story. Fortunately, they're going to tell it in Spanish. But it's a beautiful Mass, and it's one of the few things that I've been to where I've seen. I love to go to the Our Lady of Guadalupe Mass. To see in the entire community come up and the love that they have because of this apparition, because of her coming to the world when it needed it, there were more that's the biggest conversion event that's ever happened. There are estimates like it was instantly 6 million people converted as they started hearing the story. That's my synopsis of the story. And I don't think I'm terribly far off. I don't think I got you to the key points. There are many sources that you can read it from. So this is just kind of some of the stuff. So this would have been one good thing about the Franciscans is they would record everything. And then this is also So this would be an early baptism event that the Franciscans would have done. And then as they were telling the story, they wrote it how the Aztecs would. And so theirs was kind of a pictograph language, kind of like Egyptian. And then this is some of the stuff that they put together for catechesis on that. Obviously from that you can tell who the bishop is down there with his mitre. I'm not able to translate the whole thing. I just thought it was interesting, and they totally documented this whole thing as soon as it happened. The bishop believed it. This was all just to build a church. So he sent, here's what's going on. He sent it back to Rome and all that. This is kind of their story telling how it happened, and this is how the Aztecs would have communicated, how the indigenous people would speak. I mean, so it wasn't I need a language majors. It wasn't a alphabet-based language. It would have been the pictograph-based language for them. So kind of like we would think of Egyptians, probably more like that. And then this would have been from their documentation of sending it back. This is actually a copy from the original stuff that was sent back, kind of laying out the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So Juan Diego, and he'd seen the lady up there. But this is one of the largest mass conversion events. And if you compare it to, I think the estimates are like when Martin Luther first led when he walked away, that was like 1.5 million people that walked away. So the start of the Protestant Reformation. This was an instant event of 6 million people coming in. So it's kind of Mary showing up saying, I can overshadow that like that. And that's exactly what she did. Now, most important thing we got to know about Mary, through everything that we've done. Mary doesn't do anything to glorify herself. She is the humblest of people in the universe. Everything she wants to do is to magnify what Christ has done, to magnify what God has given us. And we always have to remember that with Mary. We don't worship Mary, we adore her. She's great, we only worship God. And I know for those of you that are going through OCIA and looking at converting to the church, Mary can be a big stumbling block. So part of what we're doing is what I've done helps with that, but not to create an obstacle, help you understand it. But Mary's not doing any of this. Mary didn't come to do this to glorify herself. She came to glorify God. And she's doing it on his behalf. And that's what every apparition that she's ever done has always been to glorify God. Do I have another picture? I'm going to save that one. There's a couple things about this. So it was a mass conversion event. That's why Our Lady of Guadalupe is so important, especially not just to the Mexicans, not just to as we go out from Mexico. It's a shame, this is all through Latin and Southern and Central America have such a reverence for her because she shaped the political future at the time for that, or the religious future that's still in place at that time for Central and Latin and South America. That all came from that. We, in the United States, being more Protestant because of coming from England, we don't always make these associations, but she declares, she is the benedictress of the Americas for all of us. It's a beautiful celebration that everyone is more than welcome, but there's some things what the bishop was so amazed about, when he went and he saw this, there are things that are in here that there's no way an Aztec could ever know about the importance to Christianity, of what they come from and what they represent. And there are things in here that there's no way a European would ever understand or know anything about. So the blending of it even makes it more important. So like from a Christian, so looking at this as a Christian icon, this Mandalora, which is kind of roundish, it's more on the painting you're going to see it. You're not going to see it here. The kind of the background, well, it's kind of these two. It's a Christian symbol of sanctity. Halos. So think of that same thing. The blue color of her mantle symbolizes immortality and eternal happiness with God in heaven. The sash around her waist, not so much the bow, because that means something too, is a symbol of virginity, purity, and devotion to God. In the picture, there's a cloud surrounding her, and that signifies the invisible and inexpressible God in the world. And this is what our Christian icons use. So the bishop would know these things. We don't really understand them anymore. The Orthodox are really into icons, and they still use it. So if you look at some of our icons that we have in the narthex, they'll have some of these things in them. The pink color of her tunic, this is really pink. We kind of got a purple light, so the colors are a little off. That recalls the red of self-sacrificing love. There are leaves on the tunic, and they're a symbol of paradise. The moon under Our Lady's feet, which we don't really have here in the painting, you would like see the moon. Under Our Lady's feet is an illusion of the woman in the apocalypse. So, Revelation. The lining of her tunic, which you really can't see, but that's that specific lining there shows that she is for royalty and that she's pure. The stars in the mantle indicate her title as Queen of Heaven. Fifth glorious mystery. Let me break from this. Okay. They've actually done another study on the stars in the mantle. And the stars that are actually scaled down version here, look at the one in there, because it's so like the picture that we have in there is a certified copy that the Cardinal of Mexico City has said that's an exact copy, and he actually signs it off on the bottom saying this is an exact copy. I have a half-size version of that the bishop has signed. The Cardinal's the bishop of Mexico City, so I can use it interchangeably. They've done an analysis on the stars that are in the painting, and they map out to actually what the constellations, what the stars in the sky would have looked like at that night when this happened. Now, there's some of these things that are just creepy. They're supernatural. The angel, I forget who asked, she's his servant, Mary, Queen of Angels. Her eyes, the painting shows it better. I told you about them looking at them, but in here they're signifying the way that her eyes symbolize the contemplation and spiritual union with God. That's part of the iconography that you'll see that's constant in a lot of things. Her bent knee, so you can see it better from the side. It just kind of shows that humility before God. And her smile, I don't see this one. Expressing joy and happiness at being in the presence of the Creator. I'm just not. Physically, I can't see the smile from this, but so to sum this up from the European standpoint, this is a completely understandable Christian icon that would have told this entire story or this entire breakdown that I told you. So someone who knows their Christian icons, like the ones out front, like Father Ignacio has in his office, he's lots of mini icons, that explains things from a Christian standpoint. There's no way a Indian, uneducated in the 1500s, would have known any of this. Now let me flip it. There's also an Aztec codex with this, if looking at it. So these are things the natives, everyone who was indigenous to the area, would know from the Aztec religion of where they grew up. The fact that she's not wearing a mask, because in a lot of art they have masks on, signifies that she's human and not a goddess. Her loose hair signifies that she's a virgin. So just wearing her hair down in the icon in the artwork is showing that she's a virgin, and she's not a goddess. The blue mantle symbolizes heaven for them. What they would believe heaven is. The mantles covering the sky, so there would be, in the painting, there would be stuff behind there. Signifies that the lady rules the stars, not the other way around, because she's in front of it. She's the boss of the sky. The fact that, again, you can't see the whole thing from this, you can kind of follow along so you can, when you go look at the big one, you'll understand a little bit better. Mary's obscuring the sun signifies that she's more powerful than the sun itself, the greatest life-giving force on earth. The arrangements on the star, Mary's mantle, made it clear that Aztec priests correspond with their location on December 12th, 1532. The Aztecs knew their stars. The pink tunic, again, we were doing the pink end, to the Aztecs, that's the color of the rising sun, and it's a sign of renewal of life. The Moor, kind of looks like horns. It's a footstool for Mary, signifying the dethronement of the moon god. Hands folded in prayer is that she's honoring someone more powerful than herself. The blue mantles covering the flora icon on the dress shows heavenly care of the earth. I thought I looked up to know where that one is, but I don't remember now. The angel holding her clothing signifies that she's human, and this is from the Aztec culture, okay? The bent knee here signifies a dance, a form of prayer, and her paying homage to the gods. The flowers rooted in the sky signify that heaven is the source of life for people. And there's a magnolia, and I can't remember, I think it's here. No, that's not magnolia, that's another one. Symbolizes human hearts that were offered to the gods. So I think that is the magnolia there. Because they would, when they would sacrifice, they would take the heart out and offer it to the gods. Under the neck, there's a brooch with a cross. Traditionally depicts the Aztec culture an image of a god. So we wear a cross, right? They would wear their symbol depicting, and her god is Jesus, right? The bow was a signal of pregnancy to the Aztecs when a woman was wearing a bow. And I think this is the quinix. It's another flower. It's a specific flower. It's that lower middle one. It's kind of a depiction of it. It's a symbol of perfection and transcendence, a symbol of the principle of order of the universe. So if you were a natural inhabitant of the area, that's what you would see. And no European priest coming over would know any of that. It was the image and the spreading of the image and the knowing of that image that helped spread Christianity, Catholicism. And the priests, they would spend all day long baptizing people. Now, I get tired baptizing like 7, 8 little kids. Thousands every day. So it's like the largest mass conversion thing that's ever happened. Instantaneously. It completely changed the religious structure overnight. Go spend some time in front of the picture of church. If you know where it is, it's in the back. It's got candles. You can pray there, and you can see it more in its glory. If you will appease me, this church is beautiful. It's actually, I had the pleasure. There's the main big basilica. Maybe it could hold 5,000. That's the new church today. And there's this giant courtyard all around it, and it's 6 million people. If you can go look it up on the 12th and the 13th of December, and they'll tell you how big the estimates were. And their father says that they're crowded in the streets. Everyone's just trying to they're packed on each other. Everyone's just wanting to get there. I can't imagine it, and I've been there. It's got to be for blocks and blocks and blocks, and it's not like a smooth, flat parking lot. It's kind of timbly. But the bishop did build a church, and here's one of the neat that I thought was neat. The original church is, of course, in ruins now. There's actually 3 basilicas lined up next to each other. The first basilica was built on the ruins of the churches. As the popularity kept growing for the day and more and more people would go to the feast day, the basilicas keep getting bigger. Right next to it is the second basilica, so it's kind of like, it's like the baby bear, the mama bear, and the papa bear. I mean, we keep getting bigger and bigger and more grandiose. The coolest thing for me, this is one of my events that I went through personally, was I led a pilgrimage for Father Tree from Our Lady of the Mountains down for Our Lady of Guadalupe. We went, January is a fabulous time to go to Mexico. It's not, and Mexico City itself is a very high elevation. So it's not like going to Cancun, you're going to get really bad sunburns and all that. It's not going to be hot like Cancun. It's a gorgeous time of year, and it's before the little nasty flies come out. A very pleasant time of the year, but we got to say Mass we would have our daily Mass a couple of times in the original basilica. And it's still there. It's smaller than here. It's probably like half of the size. But they're actually doing an archaeological dig inside the church down to the original church that the bishop built that Mary asked for. And there's a couple of churches built on top of that, but one of the neatest things, being there, I could look over from my seat, and that's where it happened. That was the first church built. Mexico City is if you've never been to Mexico, I think it's one of my favorite places to go to. And I hope that I have brought some understanding of Our Lady of Guadalupe, that in the English church, the Gringo church, that we just have missed out on. And when you think what she's done for us, it's totally miraculous. Do I match up to your grandmother's stories? Okay.
Was it one of the original reasons she appeared was they were still
Oh, yeah.
And she wanted that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
That was an impetus for her to.
That was one of the, yeah, that was one of the reasons. The Aztecs sacrificed. And, she's there to help the priest. She's there to help the conversion. She went to help bring glory to the kingdom of God. But yes, what's the sport? Lacrosse. Lacrosse actually comes from the indigenous population in that area at the time. Do you know what they used as the ball? They used the skulls of their conquerors. So that's the roots of lacrosse. Any other questions? You had your hand up. I have a wonderful book on that, but if you can find all this on our Lady of Guadalupe. I don't have it with me. It's still packed up because I've still not moved out of my boxes or my office out. But you can Google it, and there are plenty of Catholic sites on this.
There's a YouTube video that's awesome, and it shows not only the symbolism in the body, but all the stuff in the eyes.
But it's a miraculous story. And so there's basically the 5 different apparitions. Most people only think about the 4, but then there's also when she healed the uncle. And then you can go to each of these sites. Tapek Hill, and there's convents built on top of it. There's always one of those places that there are always people there. We kind of broke tradition on our last day just so we could go to Mass with the community that on Sunday before we left, just because it's such a special church. And it's like, they have Sunday Mass every hour. There's a giant museum, and you actually get on this elevator, and here's where they have the original tilma, and it's kind of mounted like that painting. That's why everyone gets that painting. It's mounted in that same way with a cross, and you actually take this escalator ride kind of down. You take an escalator, you go down, and then because there's so many pilgrims wanting to come see this, they've put those escalators like at the airport just to keep people moving. Because 6 million people want to come see us. It's an amazing sight. It's an amazing thing to witness. Maybe someday we can talk Father into us going to a pilgrimage there, because I know multiple people have gone on pilgrimage there, and it's like, we got to go back again. It's just so amazing to go out and see everything there. And then the history, the Catholic history in Mexico is so profound. Just things that we don't know about here. The Mexican Revolution, several revolutions that have happened in Mexico, a lot of them have been based around church and state and wanting to kick the church out because they're taking power. There's so many saints that are involved in Mexico, and their rise for independence. So it's a totally wonderful place. And just all the, I was telling you, like Pueblo and all those little trade towns that popped up. And they're just, like I said, I've never seen so many churches in my life. And it's not just, there really are, every street, there's like 4 churches right there in every corner. It's just amazing. I've never witnessed anything like that. So, any other questions? I know we've gone over, that's what I do, right? I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed teaching it and sharing. And I thank you for coming. You're welcome. Oh, well, let's pray before we leave. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, good and gracious God, thank you for being with us. Thank you for allowing us to come to understand your vision a little bit better every day and the reasons things are done. We thank you for all the saints that you've given us to learn from so that we can know you as they knew them. We ask Our Lady of Guadalupe to pray for us and all the angels and saints to pray for us. Let us go about our days and continue this season, prepare for Advent, so we can prepare for your incarnation and the gift of you coming to us. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Go in peace.